think we've lost.
It's not real, but there's no...
Nie jest prawdziwy.
Right. Point shooting is a method of using a firearm in stress.
Będziemy używać broni w sytuacji stresu.
It goes against everything you've been taught. You shoot using what we call the modern
Techniki teraz
technique.
nauczone, ale teraz jak mamy
Ordinarily
sytuacji,
that
tego nie
tends to
będziemy
be
używać.
something like this,
Nie?
or this, something like that. That's the modern technique.
Taka moderna
A guy
technika.
called Jack Weaver used to be an American.
Jack
He was
Weaver, American.
a competition shooter.
Na zawody jeździł,
And he
strzelanie.
shot in circuses in America and
O, w
things like that.
cyrkusach. Cyrkus, nie?
And he used to run a competition where
strzelał.
for a certain amount of money, for $1, you'd shoot with two pistols, balloons in a corral in an area.
Yeah.
Okay.
Miał takie
A firearms instructor
Zakładał
called
się.
Jeff Cooper saw that and saw how accurate he was.
I on, wiesz,
took
balony
the
rzucał
technique.
gdzieś i strzelał 2 pistoletami na
It's
raz.
called the
i
Weaver.
wygrywał
Well, he uses the
$1.
Weaver stance. The guy was called Jack Weaver.
Jack
It's in the
Weaver, nie?
60s, 1960s, which means 1 foot back, like this, one hand supporting the weapon, another hand here so you can get a really good sight picture, so that you can hit balloons. Now, who here has ever had to fight a balloon?
No
Okay.
i no mówię,
However,
że on tak strzelał od tego
what
momentu.
Jeff Cooper did was
Zauważyli, że
he
jak jedna noga
integrated
do
it into his
przodu,
firearms
jedna do
training.
tyłu i tak normalnie jak trzyma, że to jest technika, żeby...
And civilians used to, and in America, civilians used to come to his courses, and more people were indoctrinated into the Weaver stance and the modern technique. American police officers go and train in these ranges as well, and more police officers saw the advantage of it, because police officers' biggest fear normally is failing a requalification shoot. Because most of us don't think we're ever going to have to shoot anybody in reality. True? So this way I can acquire a sight picture and hit the target more and more often, so I don't lose my job, or don't have to retrain.
Dużo trenować trzeba na temat strzelania. Nie?
American police officers started using it because of that. And slowly the method drifted over into Europe, Britain,
Amerykańskie techniki.
Poland, everywhere. Everybody uses that technique. Australia, everybody uses that technique now.
Amerykańskie?
The method of point shooting comes, well,
Ta metoda paint shooting.
in the 10th century, when we were using crossbows, bows and arrows. If you could get an accurate shot like that, great. But if the threat's coming towards you, it fired like that. That's point shooting.
Rozumiecie?
I can use my sights here
Tyle lat
because the
temu
threat is far away.
strzeliśmy
My
tak,
heart
nie?
rate's lower,
Jak celowałeś, okej,
and so
może-
my eyes haven't started to close down, and my brain's not started
ale
to
jak
close
ciebie
down.
atakują
If the
i
threat's
wtedy
there,
musisz strzelać, to inaczej jest. To
I'm,
jest
not,
point
I'm sort of
Jak
using the
reagować
sight. I'm
z bronią
aligning the
ze
weapon,
stresu.
but I'm not using it here.
Sytuacyjne
It's
bardzo.
not a sight picture, but I'm still aiming it. Okay? It's the same with a weapon. I will recommend you always, and I do this to anybody that uses firearms, police officers or civilians, if you can, because the
możesz.
threat is far enough away, always get the weapon out, support it, and get both foresight and rear sight aligned, and take the shot. This is for when you can't. That's all it is. Okay? Now,
Think of the knife scenario we've just done. Someone gets the drop on you.
Americans think that the answer to every threat is gun. Always go to the weapon. Did you see that video clip of, Inosanto, the knife fighter?
Yeah.
He was hired by the police to do some training. There's a video, and you can catch it on YouTube, I think, where the police officer comes into the room and he's talking to them, just like you've been doing, and he pulls a weapon and goes for the officer. Most of the cops are backing off, trying to get the gun, and he kills them every time.
Taki specjalista
Okay.
nożów atakuje policjantów. Wszyscy
They
policjanci
all
do tyłu idą,
use
nie?
this method. That's the reason. Now,
Ale-
point shooting,
Point shooting.
understand the method. The people that put point shooting together understand the effects of stress on the body. The effects of stress on the body mean
Dużo
that
rozmawia, ale...
if I learn to fight this way, what I don't know is the primal animal in me, the ape in
Jeszcze
me,
raz powtarzę, że
wants to square to the threat. It doesn't want one arm. This
strzelanie
is a
stresu,
shooting
no.
stance. It doesn't,
jest
this is a fighting,
strzelnicy.
competition fighting stance.
Strzelnicy tak
When the
samo
threat's
przed
there,
nożem.
I want to square on to the target, to the threat. The reason is, the mammalian part of my brain, the cerebral cortex, is being used. That's where your fight or flight syndrome is, that's where all your survival skills are. The human part of the brain, humans and dolphins have developed a forebrain, the frontal lobe. Okay? No other animals, mammals don't have it. Only humans and some dolphins have it, a forebrain.
Delfiny i ludzie
One of the, do you know what
mają
vasoconstriction is?
rozwinięty taki mózg, że
Once adrenaline hits the system,
jak adrenalina jest
the peripheral blood supply starts
Systemy.
pooling in the middle. It starts coming into the middle. So that it can run and fight harder and faster,
krew wszystko
and you don't
przychodzi
feel as
do
much pain.
środka,
That's
a
why some
serce
people,
i
when
wtedy
you think you're scared,
adrenalina
you can
pracuje.
get
W
shaky hands.
sytuacji stresującej możesz
When you're talking for the first
Szybko
time in a
albo
class, it's a
walczyć,
threat
to
to
jest
you,
to ten-
and you can go dry. That's because your saliva glands have dried up.
tylko
It's
ludzie
part of the
delfiny
survival
mają.
method. It's not fear. The problem for firearms officers is that the lenses of the eyes, auxiliary muscles that control the lenses of their eyes, lose the blood supply. So the lenses go flat. So if you're trying to acquire a sight picture, look at the threat and look at your sights, your body won't allow you to do it. Your body won't allow you to blade your body because the body knows, the animal knows that its lenses of its eyes have gone flat. So it wants to go square to the threat. You, however, in all of your training, turn slightly. The method of doing it, the method I learned when I first joined firearms in the early 80s was what we call the isosceles stance. It's the way the Israelis shoot. Square to the threat, both hands fully extended. Okay, that's because it's understood that the lenses will go flat and you cannot acquire a sight picture and look at the threat. The training says acquire a sight picture, the survival system in the body says look at the threat, because that's the most important cue. Okay, so that's what point shooting is based on. So we have to develop a method of aiming that doesn't involve acquiring a sight picture. Okay, the method, and now I'll go through some of the drills to show you how we achieve that. Okay, I'll use the camera as a target. The first thing we've got to do is work out how we're going to put the gun on our centre line. You'll know all about centre line. Yeah. Now then, if all you've ever done is shot like this, the thing you don't know is that once we're under stress, all the skeletal muscles tense a bit. 60% of police first shots miss the target. If I've always learnt that way, and I'm under stress now, the round will probably go that way. Because what's happened is, this muscle and these muscles have flexed. Now we know that the way to, like I did before with the bicep curl, to make that strong and flex tight, there's a bend on the elbow, there's a bend on the wrist. I can't flex my bicep keeping my arm straight, but if I bend my arm slightly, it starts to tighten. The problem now is, that happens. Because my body, the animal in me, is trying to strengthen the whole of the body, so I'm all tensed up. So what we need, but fortunately for us, what that does, if I square to the target, the weapon is now square on the target. Okay, unlike this, it's now square on the target. So what I have to do is reteach myself. It's relatively easy to do. We have to take care of who fires rifles here, who shoots rifles. Doing our elevation is with the firearm and windage. Okay, I use those two terms, elevation and windage. Normally, if your rounds start going left or right, the firearms instructor will stand next to you and say, are you putting too much finger through the trigger? Or you're not putting enough fingers through the trigger? Point shooting, whoever as a kid had a water pistol, bang, and you will usually we're on target. You put the crook of that finger on the trigger, so your finger is, the first part of your finger is all the way through. You wrap your hand round it and squeeze it. There's your stance. Now from here, all I'm going to do, to deal with windage, you'll have a combat ready position. The Americans have that sul position and all that sort of business, don't they? The Americans again, sorry. The ready position during the Second World War, before the Second World War, I'm not going to go into the history of that, I'll talk about it later, is here.
Tak stali na wojnie drugiej.
The advantage of that, and they used to teach with finger on trigger. I'm not suggesting you do that, but they used to teach that. You know this is safe. Okay. So from here, I've got full peripheral field. I can see everything. Okay. Can I now? And practice bringing the weapon up until it blocked out the target, then firing a round off. So we now don't need. I'm doing this really quickly. We now don't need to use the sights to get it in the centre of the target. All we do is, as the weapon comes up, I'll point over there, as the weapon comes up, I squeeze tight, bang, and now start to relax. The reason I squeeze tight is because I've got one hand on the gun. Now this is probably a 38, would be a 38 or something. With a 9mm, even a 45 round or a 40 caliber round, by squeezing the weapon tight, you honestly don't need a support hand. If you squeeze it really tight until the gun shakes, the round still goes here. That's the secret of it. Now, under stress, I've already said that all the muscles in the body flex. So you've got to know, you must know that even here you'll be squeezing the gun. So we can use that to our advantage by bringing the weapon up and squeezing it tight and firing the rounds off. Okay. How we take care of elevation, firing too high, is we shoot different. We fire at a different target now, don't we? We fire around here. They used to fire here because all the research, all the empirical evidence said that if I shot somebody in the stomach, he dropped the knife. If I shot him in the chest, he kept coming. There are recorded incidents of that happening, and that's so. During the war and before the war, in the early 20th century, they used to shoot lower. Where you would fire a baton round. You fire a baton round here, you know, a rubber bullet is fired here at the belt buckle. So they used to fire at the belt buckle. Now then, if I bring the weapon up, if I squeeze tight, I can't shoot high because the skeleton, the muscles of my skeleton, won't allow me to squeeze the gun tight and fire high. It means it goes around here because I'm squeezing tight. So we've taken care of, just understanding what the body does, we've taken care of windage and elevation. And also, if I fire at the belt buckle, if I fire here, and it's one of those rounds that goes here, or here, which we all do, don't we, when we're hitting targets, we all do it. But if I fire here, it goes here or here. So there's more of a percentage chance of being successful with less rounds. Yeah? Now then, the 4 points, the 4 stances that we use, well, to start with, we get rid of stances. I've gone on about stances. This is so that when the gun's empty and you're still coming, I can use the weapon, you can't push me over. So I've gone over that enough times, haven't I? Yeah. Doesn't matter where your stance is, really honestly doesn't matter. Sometimes I'll stand like that to shoot at the target. So, stance is immaterial because you're going to be walking over there. You're in open country search looking for somebody that's got a gun. You've got your weapon out because you think he's pretty close, and there's none of this walking around in the range looking for him. You just walk normally, don't you? And you might have to fire at any point, so you can't afford to have a stance again. Okay, the stances, the postures we do use are full extension, 3/4, half hip, and close hip. And all of them, apart from the last one, are on your centre line. From here, full extension, where I can't see something here. I can't see your right leg. 3/4, where I can see an awful lot more. I could talk to you from here, put the knife down, and I can see everything that goes on. Half hit, that's for a very close draw, yeah? And then this one comes off the centre line a little bit. But this is for when you're here, bang, 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 bang. So we teach 4 postures, yeah? But in truth, the design, that's for me, but in truth, the design to work from here, bang, 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 bang. Okay, it's pure survival, yeah. What happens is that one of the drills I run people through is we start that far away from the target, a metre away from the target, or closer, and they'll fire around, take a step back, fire around, take a step back, fire around. Just keep taking a step back and firing around. Eventually, and it's in you, you might all be different. Eventually, you get to a point where you want the weapon here because you're not comfortable like hitting the target. eventually you'll end up putting two hands on the target and using the sights because you need to. But most people, after an hour or 2 hours of shooting, point shooting, they are shooting 5 or 6 metres, at least 5 or 6 metres away from the target, one hand on the weapon, and the rounds are going dead centre. And you know then that your training is based on real gunfights and the stress that people suffer. So it supports you instead of causing you problems. Yeah. Some of the things I do, I learnt from an ranger, a captain in the American Rangers. He turns the gun ever so slightly. He turns the gun slightly. They found out that by turning the gun ever so slightly, it employs the muscles better and stronger. So that helps, even that supports what you do. I hurt my bicep years ago. Not that one, obviously that one, but this one slightly. And to get a really strong grip on the gun, I just have to turn the gun ever so slightly. But I'm not using the sight, so it doesn't matter. Right, I'll just go back, wheel back now. Gripping the gun, finger on the trigger, wrap it round. Okay, like that. Most people are told to firmly hold the gun, but not too tight, and then support it, however you're going to support it. That's what most firearms instructors, that's the most firearms instructors teach. What we do is, all of you, can you all just do that? Yeah, loser and all that. What I want you to do is pull your thumb down and resist, so it can't be pulled down. Are you all, to some small degree, using those muscles as well? You're attacked, right? Yeah? So, if you've got hold of the gun like this, and you start like this, and you start squeezing, you're employing that. So it adds a little bit of doubt into it. Is the round going to go off at the right time and things like that? Because the truth, so what we do is, it looks better with an with a semi-auto, a Glock or something like that. But what we do is, the thumb points at the target, more or less. Because what you do then is, you pinch the gun that way, rather than grip the gun that way. A lot of people put the thumb down. That destroys the grip. You've not got a firm grip of the gun. If you pinch the grip there, what you find is the thumb and first knuckle pinch the gun, and then that finger grips really tightly, and these start to grip tightly, because when we're climbing, these are the fingers that you hang on with, aren't they? So we pinch the gun and grip it in tight, as if you're trying to pull it down. That gives you a really powerful grip on the gun. So once the stress factor is involved and the skeleton and the muscles start tightening up, you've got a powerful grip on the gun, which is shaking as you fire. You're using your body in its optimum way, its most effective way. And like I said before, that means that your training supports you in a dangerous situation instead of getting in the way of you dealing with a dangerous situation. Does that make sense? Now then, so that's point shooting with a pistol. Like I say, normally it would be, we do loads and loads and loads of drills. You've got to get comfortable with it and get confident with it. But then we start, we'll sort of from here, hit, draw, obviously not, you'd hit the target, draw and start shooting. And then we move into room entries. Room entries. So if that's one side of the doorway, the other side of the doorway is there, stacking up on the doorway with whatever the weapon you've got, it doesn't matter. From here, when we walk in, you may have two targets. What people normally do is come into the room, out of the way of the doorway, so there's no silhouette. And they're like, engage the threat, engage the threat. The problem then is you start using your eyes, and sometimes those rounds go over there. With point shooting, you come into the room, the weapon comes up when you see the threat, and you take a step towards it. The rounds are going right in the middle, so it's virtually guaranteed hits. Once I've shot him, there's the next threat. All I do is change, bang, bang. If that's a threat, bang, bang. The rounds go dead centre without using the sights. So that's it. As quick as I could explain it, that's point shooting. If you've got an MP5 or something like that, it's tucked in here. Imagine belt buckle, weapon, nose. As much as you can. That way, the weapon, most weapons, MP5, carbines, handguns, they're designed so that if you squeeze it, it tends to be horizontal. So with your carbine tucked in here, it's horizontal and you can see everything. So if you're on an outside containment and you now have to go into there to search it, as you walk into the place, all we do is go into underarm position. We don't put the weapon away and draw the handgun. We just, from here, from the aimed position, we drop it into underarm, so it's now only that long, and move in and start using that. Makes us more versatile, because then we come out of this room and there's a long corridor, so straight away, so you don't have to start transitioning between weapons and things like that. But it worked. I've done it with, mainly with self-loading pistols, you know, Glocks and things, but MP5s, shotguns, all sorts of weapons. It works really well. Initially started with, I think, use of firearms in point shooting was the First World War, because under the tunnels of the Somme, you know, the tunnels that were under the trenches, they were using sawn-off shotguns, pistols, that sort of thing, in low light. And so if it's low light, you can't use your sights anyway. And I think that's where point shooting started to be used. They just knew that it worked. It was not a technique taught. The guys down there started using it, developed it there. Then it took off in the Shanghai Municipal Police Department in the early 1900s. They were getting guys killed every day. And a guy called Fairbairn, the guy that invented the British commando knife, Fairbairn and Sykes were police officers there, and they started developing this training to make, and it was a civilian police force. We're not military anymore, that's a civilian police force. And they trained it up to the beginning of the Second World War. They then went back to Britain, became captains in the army and started teaching to the commandos and these sorts, so all the special forces and all these sort of people, that's what they learn.
And is it now trained to the police officers, the armed police officers in Britain?
No.
No.
No. The only people that get, you say you get 3 metres away from the target. The only people, unless it's changed, that get 3 metres from the target are those special branch officers that are doing bodyguard training. So I have a small pistol and they're shooting from here. And all they do is they just pull the gun out. They've got 2 or 3 seconds, pull the weapon out, and you know, they're not doing point shooting. They're not doing what I've just explained. They're just trying to do it with one hand on the gun and don't really know what they're doing. Because there's nobody there that's had the passion to research it and then put it into lessons. Plus cops, they've got so many things to refresh. They've got so many weapons, so many tactics that really matter. I did this training in Devon and Cornwall, the police force down in south of Britain. Went down for a week and we had a debrief, and all the constable firearms instructors were saying, that's great, we've loved it, they loved it. I'd put them all through the training. And they said, we'll teach it to the close protection bodyguards, we'll teach it to our entry teams, you know, dynamic rapid entry teams, things like that. And the chief inspector, the boss, said, nope, from now on it's taught to every basic firearms officer when he comes in, because they're the guys that are going to meet somebody in the street. Your SWAT team come an hour later. Special branch never draw a weapon, because all they get is somebody tries to punch the boss or throw an egg at him. Says, you guys are the ones that are going to meet somebody in a dark alley at night. Suddenly encounter somebody unlawfully, suddenly encounter somebody armed or otherwise so dangerous. You're the guys that it's going to happen to. And you're going to need those skills. Under stress, in fear, trying to use your weapon.